Good afternoon, Facebook. Today is April 9th, 2020. The time is 12:12 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And here we go. I haven't gone on with a whole lot of news and a whole lot of updates about what's happening with coronavirus over the past couple of days. I thought it prudent to take a step back from that and not use the stream exclusively for monitoring what's happening with this pandemic. But there has been a lot going on. There have been a lot of developments, not only in the way that the pandemic is spreading, but also in the way that the numbers are being tabulated, the way that the results of these things are being reported, and the way that the governments of the various countries are responding to it. There's also a lot going on with the World Health Organization and its Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. I've been mentioning that intermittently throughout the last several weeks that I've been doing this. And there are figures that appear to be encouraging, but there's also a lot of cause not to get too optimistic. So I've got a lot to cover today. I'm just going to get started as I typically do with the latest figures. I'm going to start more broadly and then zoom in to the most local figures that I have available. Worldwide, it looks like the total number of positive or confirmed cases of COVID-19 are now sitting at 1,576,077 cases. And globally, we're looking at 93,575 deaths from coronavirus. The United States is by far the epicenter. Our country is now looking at 454,615 positive or confirmed cases, and we have lost 16,074 lives. In second place is Spain with 152,000. Italy, 143,626, followed by France, Germany, and China is all the way down at sixth place now, reporting only 81,865 with 3,335 fatalities. Sixth place, where they were for quite some time the epicenter of the pandemic. They now are reporting a total of only 81,865. So less than 20%. The entire country of China, with its, I should have looked it up. Doesn't China have over 1 billion people? More than 3 times the population of the United States, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. And yet less than 20% of the total positive or confirmed cases? I find this difficult to believe. I find it difficult to believe. The United States has no way to independently verify the figures that are being released by China. This is just what China's telling us. I'll expand more on that in just a second. Let's look at United States figures first. The United States, as I said, 454,615 total cases. New York remains the hardest hit. Latest figures have New York sitting at 159,937 cases and 7,067 fatalities. Washington has slipped all the way down to 12th place, where for a long time, the state of Washington was among the top 3 worst affected states. There are now a lot more states doing way worse than us. We're all the way down in 12th place with a total of 9,342 positive or confirmed cases and 431 fatalities. Texas is doing worse than Washington. Georgia, Illinois, Florida, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, California, Michigan, and New Jersey all have reported higher numbers than the state of Washington as of today. And in my former home state of Nebraska, their numbers also are increasing. I think when I first started keeping track of Nebraska numbers, they were fifth from the bottom. Well, now I think they are ninth from the bottom. Nebraska is looking at 567 cases and 14 deaths as of this morning's figures. And again, this is coming from worldometers.info/coronavirus. Nebraska, 567 positive or confirmed cases and 14 fatalities. It looks like Alaska is now the least affected of all of the United States' 50 states. Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, United States Virgin Islands. These are all sort of categorized separately as territories and not as states. But looking at even more locally, looks like Pierce County, where I currently reside, is looking at 759 positive or confirmed cases with a total of 15 fatalities. Snohomish County, 1,651 cases with 62 fatalities. And King County, 3,668 positive or confirmed cases with 242 fatalities. King County is where nationally this all began back in, I want to say it was in January, where we had someone fly over from China, land at SeaTac, and became the first confirmed case of coronavirus in the United States. Now, I wanted to take a look at the fatality rate. I spent considerable time in a previous broadcast on examining Italy and what made the mortality rate in Italy so much higher than in so many other countries. And they still remain the worst off when it comes to their mortality rate. Italy, 143,626 with a total of 18,279, putting their mortality rate at 12.7. Spain is 10%. The numbers that I got this morning, 15,238 deaths out of 152,446, put it at 9.99%. So I'm just rounding that up to 10%. France is 10.3%. Germany has the lowest mortality rate of any of the top 5 worst affected countries. As of this morning, Germany had 115,104 cases with a total of 2,431 deaths, putting their mortality rate for coronavirus at only 2.1%. And I'm going to do more reading tomorrow to figure out if there's something that Germany has done with respect to mitigation, which has resulted in such a low mortality rate. Although I don't know that mitigation would have any difference. Mitigation stops the spread. But what is it about Germany which has rendered its fatality rate so low as compared to other nations, especially as compared to France, Spain, and Italy? They're experiencing mortality rates over 5, sometimes 6 times higher in neighboring European nations. So what makes the mortality rate in Germany so low? Maybe it's something to do with the age. I don't know. I'll have to look into that probably tomorrow or later tonight and see what's going on in Germany that has their numbers so low. Well, a couple days ago, I made a passing observation as to the reaction, politically speaking, that some politicians are demonstrating to the way the federal government, and in particular the current presidential administration, is responding. And there was one story that caught my eye, that being that there was a lawmaker who, based on the president's promotion of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, I can't say the name today, azithromycin, as being a potentially effective treatment of coronavirus, this lawmaker wants the president referred to the International Criminal Court and brought up on charges of crimes against humanity. I felt like this story deserved a little bit more scrutiny and a little bit more exploration, so let's be specific. A Democratic state representative in Ohio said that she can't take it anymore and vowed to refer President Trump to the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity over Trump's promotion of a drug that has not been conclusively proven to fight the coronavirus. We're not talking about somebody that's a member of the United States Congress. I think I mentioned when I first brought this up that she was. She is a member of the state government in Ohio. Her name is Tavia Golonsky, and she made this unbelievably stupid comment on Twitter that, based on the fact that the president is encouraging the use of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin as a way to treat coronavirus, she wants him brought up on charges of crimes against humanity. I went through the list of what constitutes crimes against humanity according to encyclopediabritannica.com only a couple days ago. And even trying to adopt a devil's advocate point of view, I still can't make sense of this assertion. And my inability to do so is only compounded the more I read and the more I learn about the way these things actually work with The Hague and the International Criminal Court. Now, as I understand it, it was the Rome Statute which founded the International Criminal Court, and that something like 120 plus countries have signed on to it. And the United States did sign the treaty under the administration of President Bill Clinton in the year 2000. But that treaty was never submitted to the United States Senate for ratification. I'm going to have to do a little more digging to find out why President Clinton wanted to sign this treaty, but then withheld its submission to Senate for ratification. Why did we do that? I have no idea. And so I'm going to withhold opining on that particular move. But the point is that as it stands, there is legal jurisdiction for anyone from the United States to be referred to the International Criminal Court for any charges. In fact, subsequent legal action in the years following President Clinton's decision not to have this treaty ratified has taken further action to protect American citizens from being prosecuted under the International Criminal Court. Now, this is not a partisan issue. Again, it was President Bill Clinton, a Democrat, who decided to, first of all, sign the treaty, but then second, to sort of change his mind and not submit the treaty to the Senate to be ratified. He made a statement in which he strongly discouraged his successor from having the treaty ratified, and then throughout the Bush administration, the United States took a pretty hostile stance towards the ICC. The Obama administration kind of did a little bit of toying with the idea of involving ourselves with it, but then in the latest administration, we've really put some distance there. So how exactly is anybody from the United States, particularly the President of the United States, going to be referred to the ICC for crimes against humanity when we're not even a signatory to the treaty? And when the International Criminal Court has no jurisdiction over the United States at all. So it seems to me that the position of State Representative Tavia Golonsky, as articulated in her tweets, plural, that she's doubled down on this through her Twitter account. How exactly is it that this has any legitimacy at all? I don't see that it does. I think this is nothing but political grandstanding. If there is a genuine problem and a genuine danger in the president promoting these drugs, then I think it needs to be examined in far more realistic terms than suggesting that he be sent to The Hague and tried for crimes against humanity. I think the statement I made when I first referenced this a couple days ago was that this isn't helping. This does not help anything. Okay? Even if the criticisms and the skepticism of what the president is doing with respect to these drugs is completely valid, this is nothing but grandstanding. And it makes this particular politician look ignorant and not credible in the slightest. I guess somebody, a national news commentator, I don't know who, maybe it was Rachel Maddow, but of course I don't know who it was. I don't really pay attention to MSNBC, but someone within that network openly speculated that there might be some kind of financial connection between President Trump and whoever the manufacturers are of these drugs, and that his only reason for promoting them is to enrich himself. There's, to my knowledge, and I looked into it a little bit, to my knowledge, there's absolutely no evidence to suggest there is such a financial connection. It's just more aspersions being cast without any validity to it at all. I bore pretty quickly of these. When I say I bore, I'm just basically saying that I don't have any desire to dig into it or to see how the various parties are responding to what the other side is saying. I don't care. But I think that just pointing out the things that are being said is necessary, because if all you're going to do in response to something as serious as this is make baseless statements just for the sake of demonstrating how much you hate some politician, then you're not contributing to any solution that will benefit everyone. All you're doing is trying to show how sophisticated you are by virtue of how well you can articulate your personal hatred of somebody who disagrees with your political beliefs. See, this is why I don't like to opine on politics. I don't see any substance or depth to it. It's just a lot of anger and a lot of hate and a lot of grandstanding. So I'm going to leave that situation as is. Apparently, I've got a comment here from my friend Curtis. He left a comment on my live stream 5 or 6 minutes ago now. I used to live in Livorno, Italy for 3 years. It's a dirty country. Let's be honest, it's not unusual to see men urinating in the street. Well, if that's true, and if that's an accurate depiction of the state of hygiene in that region of Italy, then that might have something to do with why that country is experiencing such a high mortality rate. I wonder if these kind of practices are common in the other nations that are experiencing high mortality, Spain and France. So how does that contrast with Germany? Let's just examine that for a second. In Italy, according to my friend Curtis, who lived in Livorno for 3 years, it's a dirty place. Men urinating in the street. Do I have any friends watching the stream who lived in Germany and can make a contrasting observation? If so, please let me know. How clean and how hygienic is Germany as compared to a place like Italy? And might that have a lot to do with the enormous difference, almost 13% in Italy and barely over 2% in Germany. That's something worth looking at. So if anybody has something to contribute to that, please let me know. Now, while we're on the subject of mortality, that has been, over the last 3 to 4 days, a subject of increasing public debate with respect to how these figures are being tabulated. Dr. Birx, who is a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, recently commented that when calculating the mortality of coronavirus, that if a patient comes in with severe underlying illnesses, we're calling them comorbidities, when somebody already has an illness and then also contracts COVID-19. The way that the national mortality rate is being calculated includes that if somebody comes in with coronavirus but dies of a heart attack, that they are going to tabulate that as a coronavirus death. If someone dies with coronavirus, then we are calculating it as though they died from coronavirus. And I've heard it said that that's a very important distinction. If somebody comes in with an illness, like a heart problem, and their heart problem causes them to die, and they happen to have tested positive for coronavirus at the time that they had a heart attack, the United States government is tabulating that as a coronavirus death. And those are the kind of figures that are going into these numbers that I read out every day. So it bears pointing out, is this the same way that every country is calculating their figures? Germany, for instance, with such a lower than the United States, their mortality rate's lower than that of the United States. Does Germany also count it as a COVID-19 death if somebody comes into the hospital, dies of a disease that they already had, but happened to have coronavirus at the time? Are they calculating their death rate the same way that we are? I don't know. I have no idea. Certainly, there's no way we can know if China is doing that, because we cannot verify China's figures. All we can do is report what they say. And we've had Chinese journalists or Chinese diplomats claiming that, well, the rest of the world is just jealous of China because the Chinese authoritarian lockdown and the way that the Chinese government responded to coronavirus has resulted in the fact that they're pretty much done dealing with coronavirus, and their lockdowns are being lifted and their lives are returning to normal. And they're all saying these things in such a way as to praise effusively the communist Chinese government. And yet we have no way of independently verifying the veracity of what they're saying. They're just trying to make their own government and their own policies look good. We can't take it at face value. So we don't have any way of comparing their methods to our methods. I'm not sure how I feel about counting a death with somebody who has coronavirus but died of something else as a COVID-19 death. Because most people who catch coronavirus recover. Most, like the overwhelming majority of people who get sick with COVID-19, get better from it. So, I don't know. I don't know if that method of calculating these figures bears a little bit of adjustment. And the models, by the way, the projections for how bad this is supposed to get, they continue to change. I guess the coronavirus task force came out with projections saying that even with mitigation, strong mitigation efforts being observed, that we could look at somewhere between 100 and 200,000, 100 to 240,000, something like that, fatalities with mitigation. Now, that number was revised down to around 80, and then that number was revised down to like 60. So the way that we're predicting these figures continues to change, continues to be revised downward. Now, I understand wanting to give this whole pandemic the seriousness that it merits. But these predictions are causing a lot of fear. And it's these predictions which have resulted in the extraordinary mitigation efforts and methods that are currently being pushed and enforced. So if we've gone from 100 to 200,000 all the way down to 60,000, what does that say about the credibility of the models that we're using when making decisions of how to mitigate this thing? How can you have faith in a model whose range is that wide? 60,000 through 200,000, that's huge. And that number was only revised to that degree within the last week. So, I don't know. I think we need to continue doing what we're doing, but we also need to continue questioning this thing. Because if this is how unreliable our predictions and our models and our forecasts are, and it is that model that is the source for everything we're doing, people not being allowed to go to work every day, people not being allowed to go out to the gym, people not being allowed to attend movies or concerts, people in some states not being allowed to leave their homes under pain of criminal penalties, fines, imprisonment in some cases. And by the way, looking back at the numbers, California is looking at 19,127 total cases and 508 deaths. They are in fourth place nationwide. How do their mitigation efforts compare to ours? I understand that California was, I think, the first state to institute a mandatory stay-at-home order, right? And in fact, I think the conditions of their lockdown are way more serious than Washington State. We have a stay home, stay safe order, but we're still allowed to go outside and jog or take walks, or whereas in California, it's a shelter in place order. A lot more severe than here. And California instituted their lockdown before Washington instituted ours. Considerably before. And yet their numbers have increased. They've gotten worse. Again, their lockdown is more severe than ours. They instituted their lockdown way before we did. And yet they have shot all the way up to fourth place, and Washington State has dropped all the way down to 12th. So why does that make sense? I don't think it does. I don't think it does at all. Now, the way that various national governments around the world and international institutions initially responded to coronavirus has come under heated debate and scrutiny over the last couple of days. Now, ever since this thing started, I've been examining through the news the World Health Organization and their Inspector General, both of which have come under intense criticism because of their coziness with China. Recently, the president has been talking about decreasing or cutting off the funding from the United States to the World Health Organization because of their mishandling of this whole thing from the very beginning. Of course, the United States, as per the president's statement, will not cut any funding while the coronavirus pandemic is going on. We're going to take the prudent step of waiting until this particular crisis has abated before we take any proactive steps to reevaluate our relationship with this organization. But it bears pointing out, the first case in China of coronavirus is said to have occurred all the way back in October. But it took until, I think, the following, was it January 11th, when the World Health Organization decided to declare this whole thing as a pandemic? It's very important for that organization to make those statements, because based on how you designate whatever illness is going around, that is a strong signal to all contributing nations how they should approach locally their own mitigation efforts and their own containment efforts. And so if the World Health Organization, it's dragging its feet in how exactly they are categorizing or describing this thing, and they're doing so for politically motivated reasons, and the bulk of the money that they get is coming from the United States, that's worth looking at. This is somebody named Gordon G. Chang, essentially saying that the current administration is correct to attack the World Health Organization on coronavirus. I'm just going to read from this statement. The president was right this week to sharply criticize the inexcusable conduct of the World Health Organization regarding the novel coronavirus pandemic, and to threaten the United States to cut funding for that United Nations organization. The United States contributed over $400 million to the World Health Organization last year, far more than any other nation. China contributed only $44 million. World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus attacked the president on Wednesday by saying, quote, "If you don't want many more body bags, you refrain from politicizing it." Tedros was reacting to the president's sharp comments on Tuesday, when the president tweeted that the World Health Organization was China-centric and really blew it. Well, I've been saying it since the beginning of this. I've cited many stories and many sources who have drawn connections between the World Health Organization and China. The World Health Organization was accused of spreading Chinese propaganda. Over 500,000 people have called on the Director General of the World Health Organization to resign because of this thing. And I think that it's correct that the United States be seriously reevaluating how much money we're going to give to this organization, which, by the way, is something that's been said openly in news outlets going all the way back to 2017, that we really need to examine what the WHO is doing before we contribute even more of our taxpayer money to that organization. Because if they had handled this differently, and if China had been more transparent in the way that it handled coronavirus from the beginning, then a lot might be different right now. A lot might be different. And we have no choice but to take a very long view and prospective approach to how we're doing this. The governor of Washington has said that our local public schools will not open for the remainder of the academic year. School's over. It's barely April 9th. School is over for all of our students statewide. And people are saying in a cautiously optimistic manner that schools will probably be able to reopen as scheduled this coming fall. That's crazy. We don't even know for sure that school is going to open in the fall. We're hoping so. And we're saying that it probably will, but we're not sure. While I was out on my camping trip with my friends over the last couple days, we happened to be standing on the shore of a lake, and a couple of the people who walked past said that they were employees of one of Washington State's public school districts. And they are still categorized as essential workers. They told us that they are active in that they are continuing to deliver lunches to students, and also to deliver and then to pick up homework, and that there's also online learning taking place. So it's not like our school districts are inert right now. There's still a lot happening. And there's still a lot of interaction going on between the students and the teachers and the faculty of these schools. And I was actually very gratified to hear that there is still a lot happening to take care of students, even if they can't report to school. So made me very happy to hear that. So I don't really have a whole lot else to say. I'm seeing that there's actually been a lot more commentary on my page here. I've got people, Alexandria Ryan, look at Sweden. Good point on Sweden. How are they looking? Didn't they nix social distancing and rely on heightened sanitizing? I'm going to have to look into that. Actually, I haven't examined the Scandinavian countries at all to see how they're responding to this. Well, wow, 35 minutes of broadcast today. That's up there among the longest one of these that I've done. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to see if there's anything else that I intended to touch on. 1 second. Okay, two more quick things. Uh, Previously, I commented on instances in Pennsylvania and another one in Massachusetts where people walked into grocery stores and spat or sneezed on the produce. Well, somebody in Texas is now facing terrorism charges for allegedly threatening to spread coronavirus. A Texas teen is facing terrorism charges for allegedly threatening to spread COVID-19. 18-year-old Lorraine Maradiaga was arrested near Dallas this week after police were alerted to videos she posted on Snapchat. In one video, she claimed she had tested positive for COVID-19 and threatened to infect everyone while shopping at Walmart. In another video, the same teen was seen coughing into the camera while sitting in her car. And as a result, she's been charged with making a terroristic threat and is being held on a $20,000 bond. She has also been ordered to quarantine for 21 days once she is released. Don't be stupid. With the people in the grocery stores in Massachusetts and in Pennsylvania, and now somebody sitting in her car saying things in videos on Snapchat and social media platforms. People are taking this seriously. You know, we can debate all day long about how reliable our models and our statistics and figures are, but don't be stupid. Go around threatening to spread this thing on purpose? You're 18 years old and you just want to cause an uproar on social media. Well, enjoy sitting in jail. As far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what she deserves. And lastly, the last thing I'll bring up in terms of news stories, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin says the United States businesses could reopen by May. This is from OANN.com. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said he believes businesses in the United States could reopen by next month. In an interview Thursday, he assured the government has been working to make sure every small business has money. He credited both large and small banks for doing a great job in handling the huge amount of small business loan applications in recent days. Mnuchin noted that as soon as the president feels comfortable with progression in fighting the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, businesses will reopen, and that could possibly happen as early as May. Quote, I think as soon as the president feels comfortable with the medical issues, we are making everything necessary that American companies and American workers can be open for business, and that they have the liquidity they need to operate their business in the interim. The Treasury Secretary noted the big news today has been the Federal Reserve's plan to create $2.3 trillion in financing for businesses and municipalities. So, we're starting to make plans for how to end this lockdown. And that's encouraging to me. I don't know that we can say for sure that we've hit the apex of this curve and that the numbers are going to start consistently decreasing from this point forward. But people are starting to act as if that's where we are. And instead of putting all of the focus and energy into how to mitigate and how to slow the spread and how to fight this thing, we're starting to look at how specifically the country and the world is going to emerge from this. And it's my prediction and remains my point of view that the world is never going to be quite the same after this. I think Dr. Fauci, who's again a member of the coronavirus task force, has said that we should probably do away with the handshake permanently. I'm okay with that. It's never exactly been a very hygienic idea to shake someone's hand, especially if, like, you're in a position like mine, you work with the public every day when you can work. and you shake someone's hand. You've never met him before. You may never see him again. You don't know how well they take care of themselves, etc., but you're willing to reach out and grab their hand. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I prefer fist bumps anyway. So, well, in other news, I think that even though we're not able to get together as a band, Ancestors of God is moving forward with our release of our latest record, which is entitled Emperor of the Sun. I think we are going to go ahead and move forward with releasing the album through digital platforms, Spotify, iTunes, etc. And then, the particular outlet with whom we are working on the release is based in New Jersey. And yeah, they're way up there at the very top of states that are worst affected by coronavirus. So I don't expect there's going to be anybody packaging physical CDs in a building in New Jersey for the foreseeable future. But I also don't think the band wants to wait that long before getting this new music out there. So I think we're going to release everything digitally with artwork and officially release the music. I don't have a date to announce for that. But that's going to be happening sooner than later, I'm happy to say. Also, I'm planning on taking a drive this evening. It looks like we're going to have completely clear skies all throughout the rest of the day and into tonight. The full moon was a couple nights ago. The moon's not going to rise until I want to say like 10:20 or something like that this evening. And this might be my last chance to view Orion. There's an enormous, very well-known nebula in the constellation of Orion, and I have yet to use my good scope to view it. So this evening, I'm planning to take a drive to someplace at a considerable distance from the city to get away from light pollution and finally get maybe my best view yet of the Orion Nebula. So that's my plan for the day. We'll see how that shakes out. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave things. This has actually been a more energetic and more interactive broadcast than I think I've had so far. So thank you for everybody who commented and who provided information for me to think about and to look into. So with that, be good to each other.